And we are live. Jimmy Hosang and Ben Booth, please do not swear. So welcome to this month's edition of the Contact Network, or Contact Center Network. And if you are joining live, thank you very much for taking an hour out of your diaries, because I know everybody's busy. But we have got quite an awesome conversation that we're about to have with Jimmy and Ben. So before I waffle on a little bit, I'm going to ask my esteemed panel to give themselves a bit of an introduction as to who they are, where they work from, maybe an interesting fact. And I'm hoping that we're not talking to ourselves, but I'm going to hand to the more handsome of the two, Ben Booth. I'll let you go. So Ben, give the audience watching a little bit of an intro into yourself. Thank you.
Okay, you think I have an intro nailed down by now. I'm Ben Booth. I'm the CEO of MaxContact. We're a CCaaS vendor. Been in the industry over 20 years, and I used to be an implementations engineer, and I've actually installed over 600 contact centers myself. So quite vast on-site knowledge and experience.
Nice, impressive, and I love that you've got grassroots behind you there, Ben, because it means you're one of many success stories in the contact center. Bravo, Jimbo. I'll let you take yourself off mute.
Hi everyone, I'm Jimmy Hosang, and I'm the CEO of Mojo CX, a company that specializes in contact center AI, and long-time interviewee from Gary Gormley on Contact Center Network.
Brilliant. Well, I was going to say it's lovely to have you back then, Jimmy, but I don't think I will after that comment. But good to have you back as well, Ben, because you started, I think you started off our session last year with Martin, just around how you can have an awesome career in contact centers. So it's good to have you back for a second time round. And Jimmy, it's nice to have you as well, even though I might not show it sometimes. So for anybody who's watching, today we are talking about what is the future of CCaaS? And the rise of conversational AI. So we've got two spectrums here where we're seeing, is CCaaS dying and is conversational AI starting to take over, or can they coexist in perfect harmony, or will they both die and will be taken over by ASI in the near future? So we're going to have a really interesting discussion and good debate today. If you do, while you're watching, have an epiphany and you think, I'd love to ask these guys a question, or I've got a particular thought, then what I'd like you to do is just drop it into the comments on LinkedIn, because that'll allow me to do this. And I'll be able to show the comment on the screen and ask one of the panelists to get their thoughts. Or if you've got a particularly brilliant thought yourself and you'd like to kind of mention it, stick it into the comments and we can showcase it with everybody and give you some awesome PR at the same time. But before we start that, I just want to get the take from each of you into what camp are you in? Is CCaaS dying, or is conversational AI going to take over? I kind of think I know where it's going to go, but just in a 30-second pitch or statement, which camp are you in? And I'm going to start with you, Ben. So what camp are you in? Team CCaaS or Team Conversational AI?
Both, actually. I think conversational AI will be adopted, but I don't think it's the end of human interaction in contact centers, which is the other term of what we're actually saying, because CCaaS routes to people at the end of the day. So I think it will be a hybrid. I think it's another evolution of the contact center space. It will be adopted, but it won't.
So we know what camp you're in. You're in camp indecisive. Not indecisive. Camp. It could be all things. Jimmy, where are you? Are you in a similar vein, or what's your thought? Given that you're in conversational AI, I can see where we might go. But what's your thinking?
No, everything's dead. We're all dead. So I'm of the opinion that SaaS is dead. I'm of the opinion that AI is going to eat SaaS platforms. I definitely don't think that CCaaS will be the first to be eaten, but because I think that WFM, CRM is more under threat. But I think ultimately we're going to move towards a SaaS-less world, and CCaaS as it presently is a SaaS-based product. I can be a SaaS-based product, and I think moving down the line, like, it would be under threat.
Brilliant. Okay, so I've got a few questions that I'm going to frame to you today just to kind of get that debate moving. But I'm interested for anybody who's watching, what camp are you in? Are you in Team CCaaS? Are you in Team Conversational AI? Or what's your thoughts? So if you've got a particular lean to one or the other, share it in the comments and let's pull out some of those as people are watching. But my first question is to you, Ben, and I suppose we're hearing lots about AI in general, but we talk about conversational AI and we talk about how it's starting to kind of help shape how people are working and how customers are engaging. But why do you think, given kind of your I suppose your lean will naturally be to CCaaS, albeit that you think they can coexist, and I tend to agree with you. But why do you think CCaaS solutions are more likely to stay relevant? And what do you think is some of the unique value that they bring that mean AI won't replace them?
It's conversational AI is what we're talking about is automation away from people, and that's been around for a long time. The conversational AI is getting better, and I think that's what's triggered a lot of this. I will also say, and I've made this point before, the narrative that conversational AI has taken over comes from the companies that only do conversational AI. And AI and automation is part of all CCaaS vendors' roadmap. You're a CCaaS vendor, we see this as a positive. We're building these tools as well, we integrate with them, and it provides more revenue and upsell for us as an industry. CCaaS as an industry and a market is growing year on year. So the technology in itself is not seeing a decline yet. Technology doesn't get adopted as fast as everyone thinks it does. Yep. And I've mentioned the biggest uplift that AI has caused in our pipeline is people moving away from manual dialing on-prem and actually moving towards omni-channel and emails and actually going digital for the first time so they can get to AI because they haven't even took that step yet. So 18 months ago, 2 years ago, adoption of AI was meant to be everywhere in 12 months and taking over jobs. We've 12 months, 18 months on from that. It's not really happened. Now it's going to be the next 12 to 18 months. Yeah. And it just history. I've seen technology adoptions and they're slower, but contact centers are evolving. They will evolve. They've evolved multiple times in the past. It's just another evolution of the industry. It's for a software vendor. For me, it's product roadmap. It's product roadmap.
And I tend to agree with you on that. And when I look back at like films of yesteryear, so if you look back in the early 80s when Back to the Future was on, and they forecasted back to 2025, it's like by now we should be flying, we should be driving flying cars, and we're not quite there yet. But I think you've made some interesting points around adoption rates there, Ben, and I'm keen to get your input there. Why do you think that adoption is maybe a little bit slow? Because we talked about some of the tools that aren't being used. I mean, some people still aren't using web chat or email as channels. Why do you think there is I wouldn't say reluctance, but there might be a slowness or an anxiety to move into those digital spheres? What do you think's driving that?
Multiple things. One, we're squishy, fickle things, and we like what we know. We've all got skills, we've all got experiences and systems, software that we're used to. And there's a massive mindset change required to a lot of it's relinquishing control. So I've mentioned to you, we've built automated features where we've had to then build visibility of the automated features so people can override what we want to override. Even though we can do calculations significantly faster and make changes than they can, they still want that manual override. So there is a mindset shift required. There is a fear. In the same way you hear the positive stories about the adoption, you also hear the negative stories. Yeah. So that creates that indecision and etc. And I also think a lot of people are trying to jump to the end, to the extreme of what having AI in your contact center is, rather than going on a journey with it. Starting with the easy wins, start simple, prove the value, because I do think there is value. And go on a journey which takes longer. So that technology adoption is always slower. We've seen it multiple times in the industry. It does add value. I think there isn't a vendor out there that isn't say this is coming. It's just not coming in 12 months. I blurred for some reason. I don't know why that is.
It's to take the shine off Jimmy. So Jimmy, I mean, Ben's just given some really interesting takes on the CCaaS view and his thoughts on adoption there. Before I jump into the question that I've got for you, I'm just kind of any particular points that Ben's raised there that resonate with you that you think you can build on?
Yeah, I actually think the adoption and the gatekeeper aspect of it is a really interesting one versus like what is capable and what we're able to do today. I actually agree. I think that the technology is almost there or there now. I think I was on this kind of live event 18 months ago, and I said CRM is dead. I said that, everybody laughed at me. A friend of mine who shall remain nameless from Liverpool, he messaged me and he was like, give over, Jimmy. Like, CRM's not dead. And I was like, it is. Just watch what happens. You don't need a CRM if you've got AI that's capturing all of the information and centralizing it. And then it just turns out that, you know, over the last like 3 to 6 months, whether or not you believe them or not, Klarna have said they've got rid of Workday, they've got rid of Salesforce. They don't need all of that type of stuff anymore, and they're moving to like a SaaS-less model. And not only that, Salesforce have even flipped their model completely and are trying to now flog their Agentforce model. So look, I've got my own views around what we're capable of doing. I was always a bit of a detractor when it comes to AI. We changed our name to TMAC AI back in the day as almost a bit of a mistake because it was like, oh well, that's what everybody does, so we'll do the same. But I do actually think now more of the adoption part of it is about gatekeeping, regulations, slowing down change rather than the actual technology itself.
Okay, and I think that leads nicely into the question that I've got for you, Jimmy, around how we see, I suppose, more organizations moving towards and adopting conversational AI. And I suppose the question to you is, how do you think you see this technology maybe taking over some of the traditional kind of CCaaS functionalities? And if there's any advantage, I suppose, to bringing that to the table that maybe traditional CCaaS vendors can't support?
So yeah, I think why it's quite difficult and challenging to understand where my brain is. I think my wife says the same. It's a totally different like paradigm shift. Yeah. So it's a UI-less, UX-less, web-less kind of world that we're moving towards. And I think that's quite challenging, but I think I'm best articulating it, like try and be concise, is 100 and odd years, and it's not my strong point, but I'll try and
you said it, I didn't have to say it.
It's the way that you laughed over the top of my explanation and said it all, Gary. But anyway, let me just try and be concise. Right. So 100 and odd years ago, when phones were first invented, I just used to pick up the phone and I used to go, I want to call Ben Booth, and an operator would go and oh, Ben Booth, right, and put in the line. And it was human operators like plugging in all of the lines. Now, with the proliferation of phone calls, all of a sudden it was like, right, well, we can't, this can't happen. Like, we can't do this anymore. Like, we need to do something different, which is where we got like hard routing. So over the years, we then started to hard route and do phone lines and stuff like that. And that's how we routed all of the phone calls like around. But then we needed a proliferation of boots on the ground engineers. So that cost a lot of money. So it's like, right, well, we don't want to do that anymore. Now moving into like the 80s, like late 90s, like, right, now we need to route it all via VoIP and like the internet and networks. So they moved all of that physical demand into what some are via text that I know refer to as beard and sandals engineers, which is people who would get networks, build servers, all this type of stuff, and it would move to that. And then finally, the actual cost of all of those beard and sandals engineers, they were like, how do we reduce that cost? And we reduced that cost by moving to CCaaS. And so moving it to the cloud, making it easy for a non-geek to take a call, route it, and things like that. Now, my position is that we're actually going back 100 years. So rather than viewing everything through the web, we're now going back 100 years to the operator, where you're effectively going, I want to speak to Gary Gormley, but the benefit is that operator can do a billion things all at once, and can route you and can have conversations with you and stuff like that. So I think that's where, just broadly speaking, it wasn't that concise in the end, but that's kind of.
I was going to say, that's concise.
So just to round off though, that's why I think there's an order of things, which is, I'm like, so how does that work when I say WFM is dead? If there's anybody listening here, tell yourself, tell your friends. I don't know if there's some people from Verint and stuff on. Like, I'm really sorry, but don't invest in WFM, because for WFM, all of the forecasting, scheduling, an AI that you can speak to and you can go, I'm not well today, and it can automatically do your shift. That can be done as a back office function. I wouldn't be investing in any of that, like right now.
And I'd like, on that note, I'd like to thank our sponsors today, Verint, for. I am kidding, but Ben, I mean, Jimmy's spoken a lot there, and the transcript from this that will be turned into an article later will be interesting reading. But any particular thoughts on some of the points that Jimmy's made there about a CCaaS-less world? Can you see that happening in the near term, or do you think it's a Mojo CX pipe dream?
Not in the near, and this is the thing, when people say things are dead, when are we talking? Because even Jimmy's example there, it's an evolution, not a revolution. So we're moving towards a new world. We are. We're moving towards more automation of tasks, not even in any business. We're doing it internally. And everyone is moving that direction, but it's just not going to be that fast. And we have, again, we're fickle people, whether you like it or not. If there's all the what if scenarios, and sometimes even if automation can solve my problem, I want to speak to someone because I want to be heard.
Yeah.
And automation, we want that due process. I want them to feel that I am upset. And you're not getting rid of that, and that's not going to ever go away. Will there be less interactions? Yes, but there's the other side to the industry. I've mentioned, look, in the pandemic, since the pandemic, interactions went up 30% across all contact centers, pretty much on average. Yep. Staffing didn't. There's a reason why, all the reports say people are more unhappy than ever with customer experience. A lot of the companies we're dealing with are not looking to bring in the automation and the AI to reduce heads. They're doing it to manage the load to the level they wish to do it and get the service they want. So we're on that journey first before we then start elimination. The only one everyone comes back to for elimination is Klarna. Give me another 3 examples. No one does.
I think you've hit on an interesting one there. Go on, Jimmy. I know you're itching to say something, so build on, because you're.
But does this go back to the gatekeeping aspect of it, which is we've got companies, we've got managed service providers, we've got CCaaS providers, CRM providers, who are all whose business models is built on ever increasing like SaaS revenues, and effectively, and long-term deals that have locked in the likes of like these big brands over like multi-year deals. So is it actually a gatekeeping issue where actually the world of SaaS is going to take a massive step change, and everybody who was charging 150, 200, 250 pounds a license, they can't engage with that. Yeah, and therefore.
So Jimmy's made a really good point, and we'll come back to the agentic AI point from Danny Wareham in a second, because I think that's a really interesting one to talk about. Jimmy's point there relates very much to what Richard Samuels has put in the comment here. So Ben, coming back to what Jimmy's question, now that you had a chance to think and frame that, what's your views on the pricing elasticity and the model, the future model for CCaaS as it exists until it maybe doesn't?
This will, I'm sure this will change. Everyone's talking about outcome-based pricing, and there's people trying to deal with it. Again, that is a problem mentally. That how do you forecast your business revenue? How does the person buy it? Forecast the cost. These are mental hurdles we've got to overcome. But there will be a change. There is a concern in the big vendors. BPO space is also included, because everyone charges per agent per month or per hour. There's going to be a contraction of licenses. However, there isn't many big listed SaaS businesses that can reduce revenue by selling AI. So they're pricing even the AI at a premium. And with the inflation in people, and that does help them, you know, CCaaS in general was meant to do that. You can do more with less. It always has been. Most software is, you know, increased efficiencies. Yeah. So if there's a reduction in headcount, which is the biggest cost to a CCaaS vendor, they're increasing the license price overall for AI. Where it will get interesting are the challenger brands, because they don't have to worry about revenue contraction. They can go in and say, I can turn your 300-seat contact center into 200 seats, 150 seats, and they don't mind that uplift coming. So I think there's going to be a very interesting next 12 to 18 months on pricing. We'll see people testing outcome-based pricing because it produces an ROI and a value proposition that people will try and sell on, though it's hard for people to get their head around. And I think you're going to see some challengers and some people eating into the space as the technology gets to that proof point of value.
And do you think, Ben, that means the bigger players just go on an acquisition trail and say, right, just to stop you doing that, we're just going to give you a nice juicy offer and buy you up? Do you think that's where the market might end up? Or
they already are. The big players are acquiring and have done every year. That is a challenge in software in general. It's the reason why all the biggest software companies come from America. It's not because Europe doesn't produce great software businesses. It's because you get good and they come and buy you. So yes, that is a challenge, but there's still only so many. But that's always been a challenge. There was a consolidation, about 10 years ago, when InContact, Interactive Intelligence, etc., all got bought up by Genesys and NICE. So it has happened. That will probably happen again at some point. Yeah.
And I think you've made some really interesting points around how vendors or the challenger brands are coming in saying, right, we can turn your 300 seats into 200 seats, and we'll do that using AI, which takes us back nicely as a segue to Danny Wareham's point. I'm loving how I'm stitching this together. brain freeze. But do you think, looking at Danny's question there, in an agentic AI world, does speaking with a human become a premium? So there's two parts to that, I think. And I'm going to start with you, Ben, and then come to you, Jimmy, to say, right, Ben, we keep hearing these terms, agentic AI and AGI and ASI. I think it's for the untrained ear, it might be just worthwhile giving your interpretation of what we mean by that. But then answering Danny's question here and expanding on that agentic AI point as to how it's going to turn 300 into 200. What's your response to that as a question?
Sorry, what's that?
So if we start with for the untrained listener, AGI, agentic AI, AGI, ASI, what do we actually mean by that from a vendor perspective, and then how do we turn that into a seat reduction?
Yeah, AGI, I usually describe it in layman's terms. It's really what we're trying to get over is reasoning. Once reasoning is brought in, that mimics human, because most AI, and AI is a very broad term now, in fact, it's getting too broad, is a LLM with a workflow. So the LLM interprets language, can talk back in a human way, but it follows a workflow typically. That's what a lot of AI is doing. Or you throw a knowledge base at it, ingest the data and answers from the data that you've given. That's what is happening. AGI, but if you start doing complex tasks and cascade them, and even the best vendors in the world will say decision making or reasoning, it's 85, 90% accurate. So you cascade those tasks and you very quickly get to 60% accuracy at the end for the outcome. Once the reasoning gets better and the learning, that will change things. But when that technology is not there yet. And then the second point to it, and though there is a new CPU on the market today that makes a data center we were talking about earlier, processing power and cost is a factor.
Yeah.
The more of this we do, and the bigger the models get, and I think the models will get smaller, by the way, the cost will come down. And it's all these multiple factors when the technology will get to that adoption point. All those things will come together roughly the same time, and then it will really be adopted. It
becomes a race to the bottom. And yeah. Jimmy, that point that we talked about there with Ben earlier around that cannibalization of seats and that, hey, I'm going to turn you 300 seats into 200 seats. How do we get to that point, and how soon do you think that will happen, if not already happening?
I think this is a marketing trick by SaaS companies. So So I think it's a marketing trick. Outcome-based pricing is a marketing trick by SaaS companies who want you to deflect everything through their CCaaS platform or to their CRM and not strip them out of it. That's what they're trying to do. So we go, oh, we just do it on outcomes. We'll move the humans first. What about we remove the SaaS first? Why don't we keep the humans and get rid of Salesforce? Why don't we get rid of WFM systems and have workforce planners getting decisions coming in and then making decisions through a bot that can then go and reschedule things and stuff. Yeah. It's a ploy to go, we're going to move to outcome-based pricing. For us as Mojo, we'll move to hourly rate pricing, and you'll be able to do our hourly rate versus the hourly rate on onshore, hourly rate in South Africa, hourly rate in Philippines, hourly rate in Trinidad and Tobago. And we're not straight away as accurate as a human being within all of those regions, but the price differential, rather than being like Agentforce, which is, what is it, 1,200 to 1,400 pounds a month, if all of your outcomes go through it, well, will be £30 per month. Yeah. So there'll be a huge difference. So I think that's the first one, is like, I don't agree with how it's being framed. Outcome-based pricing, no, it'll be hourly rate, and our margins as SaaS companies will come down because we'll effectively be like the newer kind of BPOs. And then just on the cost piece, yeah, I've just got one thing to say. Not only does AI eat SaaS, AI eats AI. So as when an AI becomes so clever, it can effectively be used to train cheaper AIs. So you can see that with the O1 model and DeepSeek. DeepSeek allegedly ripped off O1 and then spent £5 million optimizing it, putting it on rails. So a multi-100 million pound model where you built a server farm and all this type of stuff effectively cost 20 times less by taking it, ripping it, and optimizing on it on DeepSeek R1. So imagine then DeepSeek R1, you could rip that and then spend 500 grand or 50 grand on making an even slightly dumber model that does a set of tasks. So even the cost of AI optimizes itself.
And we all know that there's a mountain of people somewhere scurrying away, typing everything that we're talking about right now and using it to shape the world. So just be careful what you say. And I like that you said allegedly as well, because we don't want to get sued. And I think Neve kind of sums up some of the stuff that we're saying. Is it going to be 80% of AIs delivering 20% of the CCaaS solutions? I'm interested in your thoughts on that, Ben.
I don't know. Danny made a point there. There's already companies advertising themselves that they don't use any AI, so you'll always speak to a person. That's already happening. There's lots of things for it. But we've got some clients where they do hardly any people and it's all automated because it suits their business, and it's actually, even we look at it and go, that's the right thing to do because of the tasks that they're performing and the type of interactions they're getting. But if you're doing complex, empathy-based dealing with customers, so all CCaaS is dead. Our clients range from suicide hotlines through to monthly repeat fish orders through to the HMRC. Not all these should be automated. So the answer is it'll vary. Some businesses where it's very transactional, you're checking for updates, you won't understand your balance, you need to rearrange a payment, whatever it may be. They'll go more automated, but it won't. There's no one fit all, and I think that's the problem with a lot of this. And I agree with the marketing as well, is that everyone's trying to lump everything together. In the UK alone, there's 750,000 agents. You mentioned South Africa, 1.3 million. There isn't one solution to every contact center, and that is also part of the problem where people try and apply solutions without understanding what it is they're trying to achieve. It'll be a case by case basis. It really will.
And you've both touched on a point that Andrew Charles Morehouse has made in the comments, and I really rate Andrew in terms of his insights that he shares on Conversational AI, and he's made a good point here, Jimmy, around the future of Mojo CX pipe dream. It's actually a reality that's happening. Measuring customer emotions, I am upset, requires the right type of intent-based triage and orchestration. And I think from a a conversational AI perspective and a human in the loop point of view, Ben, I think I'm with you in terms of something you said earlier, Ben, is that some people will choose to speak to an agent and a person because they want that relatability, want that resonance, they want that human feel. I'm wondering, at what point will AI catch up with the human and be able to have that empathetic centered conversation? So I'm going to ask Jimmy for his insights first, and then I'm going to come back to you, Ben, and see how that kind of shapes from a human perspective. So based on what Andrew said there, Jimmy, what's your thoughts on when AI will catch up with humans?
It's a really interesting one. So I'm all over the map a bit on this, but I just want to, on Danny's point earlier around will it be premium to speak to a human, I think this directly relates to it, because human beings only work like 8 hours a day. Like, I try and make my guys work like 24 hours and they just refuse. So like, but the
modern slavery in action, people.
No, but it's not very modern. It's I use traditional methods, but no. But in all seriousness, like, is it not a premium service to be able to, if it's 1 o'clock in the morning and you want to negotiate your insurance, is it not a premium service to be able to do that without having to wait for opening times? And I think that goes into a really interesting dynamic between humans and AIs that we've seen. So we've seen, and this is bizarre, that when it comes to like coaching actions, humans respond better to AI than to other humans. And that's because it's not as personal. So if I'm having a one-to-one with you, Gary, and I'm gonna have to give you some performance management because your AHT is like really high because you're always gabbling on to customers, and it's like you know, I could almost go back. We could almost go back 15 to 20 years until we're on that space. But no, so it's personal. And as a human, because another person's telling you that your performance hasn't been great, you take it personally. What we're seeing is that we're getting higher levels of engagement with an AI, saying a coaching action or to describe coaching performance, because it's slightly less personal. And to the final point, I do think that although it's not for everybody, and you know, it's a sensitive subject, but like things about like vulnerabilities, suicide prevention, and all that type of stuff, there are elements where a person needs to speak to a person. But I've spoken to some charitable organisations that are creating apps around mental health for men or for women or for different types of groups, and they're saying that often a fair proportion of people would prefer to speak to an AI to get some help than an actual human, because they're scared to talk to a human about their emotions and how they're feeling. And it's not, I'm not saying it's 100%, but there is a significant, it's a strangely large percentage of the population would want to do that. And it's the same with debt collection and all that type of stuff as well.
Debt collection.
And Ben, I think you said it earlier around that kind of empathy and that human piece, and Spencer's question here relates to that in a certain degree as well, and kind of helps bring in that premium-led conversation that we spoke about here. What are your thoughts on Spencer's question here as it relates to that empathy piece and that customer vulnerability point?
Well, I keep coming back to it's not one right size fits all, and I think we're going to get to hyper personalization. It is going to be, you know, the one thing that we've mentioned is you can handle lots of data now, and every interaction, and you're almost going to have mini profiles for people, and it will be right for that person. So like I said, if you talk about vulnerability, some people, you're right, debt collection, we automate quite a lot of debt collection because they don't want to talk to people. It's embarrassing. However, there's people that want to talk to a person. It's about what's right for them and not forcing them down the path that's right. This is what the balance for me. It is when you automate, are you doing it to save costs or improve experience? And if you're doing it to improve experience, then it's about me and what I prefer to do rather than I'm deflecting because it's cheaper. So again, I don't like blanket things. There is no such thing. It's going to go to hyper personalized. It's going to go data driven, and it's going to be what's right for the person and the use case.
And I think Frank's point here is around a similar point, is to say, right, it's based on different pricing models. It's based on outcomes. So I think Frank, you're in good company with this. When I kind of think about, I suppose, the future of the contact center and where it's going, and I think about all of the different CCaaS platforms and different vendors out there, I wonder, and I'll start with you here, Ben, and I'll be interested to get your thoughts as well, Jimmy, so around how does aspects like conversational AI in the current world, because we know it's not disappearing anytime soon, or in terms of CCaaS, but how does conversational AI integrate successfully with CCaaS and CRM? And is there a state where they can, I suppose, strengthen each other, or are we CRM is going, CCaaS will eventually go, so we just need to look at conversational AI as the future? How do you see all those kind of SaaS-less or SaaS-based businesses helping to strengthen, or do we think their time's up?
We all integrate with each other already. I mean, there is. You mentioned we integrate. There's always been an integration with CRMs to pass data backward and forward, and handoff points for automation like conversational AI or chatbots that they've got in place. So I don't think there's an issue with the integration between vendors. Look, a long-term view, will it die? I still think there's the problem. I can't see a world where, most companies have Salesforce. I know how this works, but I still need to go in and check things and double check on deals and where it's up to and the notes and we've got Gong. So you're looking at the details on there. I don't see a world with a headless nothing. It would take too much, and I think there'll be integrations for CCaaS vendors. Saying that how will they play with conversational AI? We'll be building. What CCaaS vendor isn't building conversational AI right now? They all are. It's an evolution. I keep saying the CCaaS will evolve, and the vendors will evolve with it. To Jimmy's point on Salesforce, they're going about their market leader. When you're as big as Salesforce, you can almost do what you want because it's a struggle to get away from them. So they can afford to go, we're going to charge as much for our automation as nearly a person, because it's embedded across your entire business. You've paid hundreds, if not millions, to get it all working. And who wants the pain of ripping all that out? No one does. Yeah. So it'll work together.
Can I ask you a question on that though? But is it like we spoke about before though, the traditional vendors though, because of the proliferation of AI and challenger brands and stuff like that, and just the cost, are they going to be able to, even though they're vast, like what is the business model if AI is worthless? Like, and it's just like, what is it if it just does things?
Like, a race to the bottom.
Yeah, it's just a race to the bottom. And like Salesforce are massive, but they've also got huge amounts of costs. Like, is it this? Like, what would, just interested in your views, like a step change of that sort of magnitude? Like, can the Verents and Salesforces and Next Cities survive like a drop like that?
Not all. Well, look, history tells you not all of them will. I mean, go before Salesforce. I mean, I remember one of our most common integrations was Goldmine, if anyone remembers Goldmine, and the on-prem CRMs that they didn't survive because they didn't innovate. Now, these companies, I think, are innovating, but there will be challenger brands that come up that if you were to build a CRM today, you wouldn't build Salesforce.
No,
you wouldn't build it like Salesforce. I think even the techs in Salesforce won't build it the same way again. So it's not like they don't know this. And yeah, they will. If you look at the market landscape in 15, 20 years from where it is today, it will look different, but that's the same as it did 15, 20 years ago. So some will survive, some won't. We're all going to have to see how that plays out. It's going to be interesting.
You know what? I think it is interesting. I think there's some interesting comments going down the side around different types of models and different types of vendors. So thanks everybody for the comments. There's some really interesting stuff in there. I'm really keen to get your thoughts, Jimmy, on a point that Spencer makes around how we better use CCaaS and conversational AI to support vulnerable customers. And in particular, the one that Spencer's mentioned there is around the deaf and hard of hearing. So how do models like CCaaS platforms as they are now, and how can conversational AI tools as they are now come together to help improve the landscape for people that might have a disability?
So I think this is why I believe in AI over CCaaS, because in a hyper-personalized world, I believe in AI, if given all of the different tools, is not constrained by a list is not constrained by a UI or a set of functions or a human being going to configuring it in a certain way. It can go and do the best thing. And so an example of that would be, how can you instantly flip from a telephone conversation with somebody who you then believe is hard of hearing into a visual conversation, like a visual conversation where the actual transcription is coming up on the person's phone. You send them a link, you indicate to them that you want to turn something visual, you send them a link, and then effectively you then as an agent, your words are then being manually transcribed to somebody who's hard of hearing. That type of functionality, it can be hard coded into these systems, but I actually believe the scope and flexibility of an AI able to identify specific human needs and then use a set of broad range of toolkits in order to satisfy those needs from an accessibility point of view, but also from a customer needs and demands point of view, I think has just greater levels of flexibility.
And Ben, from your perspective and the stuff that you're seeing in the work that you do with customers, and obviously you've got a big tranche of customers that are in the debt sector as well. How are you seeing vulnerabilities being catered for with either CCaaS solutions or conversational AI solutions? Do you see anything different?
Yeah, I mean, anything FCA or Ofgem regulated at the moment is a very, very hot topic. So the push is to move to real-time detection is the biggest. It's the post-call, it's already happened, and you're becoming reactive. And with all the duty of care and consumer duty that's coming in, it's the right thing. But let's be honest, this is the right thing to do. It's the complexities of how complicated it is. I mean, I'll give you some examples we've heard. What did we have? It was hearing in the background that a child's crying, so they've got a dependent, and they want that picking up on. So it's not just language. And I do think AI can be more accurate as well, by the way, on this, because we had one where they mentioned there was an energy company, and they mentioned that they've got a dialysis machine at home, and it didn't get picked up on. You can't cut someone's energy off from electricity when they've got a dialysis machine at home because it's death. So the level they need to go to now is ridiculous, and the detection can be more accurate. I think it will go real time, and it will have then that automatic escalation. And one thing AI does well, I mean, if you go, and I've got Copilot. If you watch Copilot transcribing me, it's not 100% accurate. No transcription is 100% accurate, which is why you get some complications in some of the things we're talking about. But what they do very well is they pick up on the topics, terms, and interpret very well. So they don't miss things like that. That's getting really good, actually. So there's a big push to real time, and there's a big push to dealing with it there and then, because the reaction's not good enough anymore. And regulation's driving this.
And I think this leads me to another question, which I've got for you, Jimmy, around the ethics surrounding conversational AI. So as it starts to scale, what do you see are maybe some of the ethical and the operational risks that businesses face, specifically regarding things like vulnerable customer, data privacy, and how do we start to plan for that in future conversations?
Yes, it is a really interesting point, and obviously some of this is captured within the EU AI Act as well. Have you, Gary? Obviously, you're really up on your Have you managed to read the 785,000 pages of the EU AI Act?
Well, maybe the contents page, which is like 10 pages long. Within that type of regulation. But first of all, going back to what Ben said earlier, the breadth of the law, effectively, everything is AI. And, I spoke to some really great people at a data privacy team recently, and we were talking about some of our algorithms, like quintile analysis.
I would say, I said in the bounds of EU regs, a quintile analysis is AI. It's an algorithm that's like doing performance management and things like that. EU AI. There we go. Just so you don't distract me, Danny. So there's a huge breadth of that. Within that, there were other things around like the bias of data, making sure that it's unbiased and stuff. Personally, my own personal just kind of ethos is that, you know, data biases obviously important to in terms of model accuracy to weight the biases, but I think too much is often spent on some of these where biases are just naturally occurring in every sort of walk of life. You can balance them as much as you want, but actually that shouldn't be. It shouldn't stop you from actually deploying these models and continuously learning. I think the only other thing I would say is around like the human aspect to it and the human impact. That's why, like, I believe that we've spoken a lot about the conversational AI and the human cost, but it's not as much for me. I think I'd prefer to get rid of the CRM licenses and the Workday licenses, and unfortunately, then some of the CCaaS licenses, than some of the human capital, at least short term, until we understand properly like what is the full impact of the automation.
That's an interesting question. I mean, interesting response rather. Ben, do you have a similar view with that? Would you say that erosion of SaaS is in that order, or do you think Jimmy is wildly off?
No, look, again, even internally, we're automating. There isn't a company now with what's going on in the world that isn't looking at operational efficiencies. There isn't anyone I speak to that isn't, regardless of what business they're in. And a key way of doing that is automating the tasks you can automate. And yeah, reducing headcount naturally reduces software licenses because everyone in my business has a software license. So that is happening. But again, pick any software vendor. It's their CAGR over year on year isn't slowing down. So it's happening, but this is what I mean. It's not as fast as people think. But yeah, it's happening. Contraction is happening, but there's also more people in the world. It just, is it having a big enough effect for it to be slowing, let alone then degrading at SaaS? It's not there yet. The numbers show that it's not happening fast enough.
And you mentioned really early on, Ben, around digital adoption. I think there is still some organizations, in fact, I know there's quite a lot of organizations that are still with an on-prem, non-cloud solution. So thinking about all those people, if it's not pushed out again, the ISDN switch off of 2027, all those people that are...
There's a good example, by the way.
Yeah, and I think that's been delayed for probably the reason why we're having some of these conversations. But I think for organizations that are now approaching that, I mean, it'll come round sooner, and we know that implementations can take 12 to 18 months sometimes. For organizations that are now thinking about, what do I pick? What is going on in the world of AI? Is it a CCaaS solution? Do I stick with my on-prem solution? For those people that are still in those throes of decision making, what are some of the nuggets that you would give them to consider in their selection making process?
Interesting. The amount of calls I have, where I tell you now, the biggest thing most people do is nothing. And this is
I like the status quo. What do you mean?
The SaaS, the second biggest reason for losing new business is the client sticks with what they got, which again shows that the adoption doesn't happen fast enough. I'd say most businesses need to understand the challenges they're trying to solve and where they're going to get to. At the moment, everyone is just like, AI is going to solve all my problems. So you go, well, what problems are you trying to solve? Just problems. We're trying to reduce, cost or efficiencies. It's go on the journey. Like I've said this multiple times, don't try and get to the destination first. Go on a journey, prove the value, put it in where it's, otherwise you'll get a pushback even internally. I mean, what business when you start talking about we're going to introduce AI where people are going to be worried about their jobs straight away? When we introduce it into our business, it's to facilitate and help at the moment, and they just need to go on that path. It is absolutely going to add value to most businesses. It's going to reduce overheads. A big valuation for most companies now is revenue per head. That's jumped up the priority list because you have to prove you can be operationally efficient. So all these things are coming, and it's choose the right partner. I think any software, I think you need to choose the right partner who's not going to try and sell you that destination. Is going to deliver value and take you on that journey, because it is going to be a journey for a lot of companies. The technology is evolving very fast, as we've discussed on this call, and there isn't a one right fits all for everyone. What works for one company does. We've mentioned debt collection. None of them work the same, and we've got loads of them, and they all do the things differently in every single one. You think you could just do a rinse and repeat? No, it doesn't work. So you've got to learn the business and see what's going to work for them.
And Jimmy, I suppose same question to you. Obviously, coming out from a different angle, is that you are knee deep in the AI analytics of it all. So for organizations that aren't even in that kind of camp yet and are still maybe on-prem solutions, and they're thinking about what on earth do I do? How do I do it? What would be your suggestions for people starting on that journey?
Yeah, so actually, I might say something slightly controversial here, which is move to CCaaS.
What's the title of this webinar?
I know a guy called Ben. He's got a really great solution. There's a couple of things there. So just on the status quo bit, it's really interesting. Spoke to a couple of buyers at some huge brands, and these paralysis because they can't make a decision.
Yeah.
And they can't make a decision because you've got Microsoft coming at them like at 1 million miles an hour going, I could do all of this over here. And that's the solution. You've got GCP, Google, and Amazon selling their AIs, but plus Connect. Then they've got a historic like Cisco or older Avaya infrastructure or something like that. Then they've got part of the operations outsourced, and there'll be 2 or 3 different outsourcers, and all of those outsourcers have got different CCaaS providers, and it's overwhelming to go, well, do I need to re-platform everybody? Do I need to do a point solution for everybody? Do I just go with Microsoft because they're the big player, but I don't really know how it rolls out? Everybody's like hammering them for attention and demands and stuff. So I think it's super challenging. I know I sound this sounds odd, but for anybody who's got like old on-prem and stuff like that, I would like start rolling out pilots to CCaaS, because I do think it's a gateway drug to conversational AI. And actually, by moving some small amounts of campaigns, piloting things, then stitching the maybe the AI agent assist, conversational intelligence, and things like that over the top, I think that gives them a feel for, if I move all of this off-prem into cloud, or I go straight to AI, then I've got an understanding of the risks and the benefits associated with that. And that's why when it comes to it's not really conversational AI, it's more agentic AI. I actually think the challenge to me, Ben, all of the market, is a provider which is just fresh, clean, like no hang-ups or anything, no historic tech or anything like that, who creates contact center AIs for pence on the pound and becomes an AI BPO. I think that's kind of the emerging thing, and that's what our people could move to.
And I think you touched on an interesting point there, Jimmy, around proof of concepts and pilots and stuff. And one of the I suppose the opportunities that people have got is looking to the BPO world for a little bit of guidance, and those people in the BPO space that have been in the cloud for a long time, have been using CCaaS solutions for a long time, are embracing conversational AI to make efficiencies within their own businesses. So do you think there is an opportunity where the BPO market can step up and say, right, hey, we'll help you even as a POC or a pilot, demonstrate the capabilities of it all. And actually, if you don't want to continue outsourcing to us as a BPO, have it all back, but we can help you demonstrate the capabilities and test it in a structured way. Do you think that industry can help people get a flavour of that type of thing? I know, Ben, you were nodding away there, I think.
Yeah, kind of. And then my business hat came on. What BPO is going to help someone prove something works and then not win business off it? I think BPOs have all the technology. They do. Look, our BPOs we work with have 10 plus CCaaS vendors in there and everything else that goes with it. So they know the art of the possible. It's the similar issue, I think, a little bit with the big CCaaS vendors in that if they're winning business, they'll absolutely prove that, but they've also charged per agent per hour and they don't want to fully do it to retain business. So this is that pricing problem. I mean, we were talking about, there's a few things there. So there's a stat I wanted to say, actually. I forgot to do it early when we were talking about license reduction. In the next 10 years, 2 billion people are going to enter the workforce around turning 18. It's the most ever in human history. So when you talk the licenses are reducing, they're reducing at like 5 and 10%. The uplift that's coming is much greater. So this is why everything's growing. But I think there is all technology. I agree with Jimmy. I think this. Look, I had a roundtable event with a lot of CCaaS vendors. It was great actually because everyone was open and honest. It was it's all C-level, and they're all telling me that they don't oversell to clients the dream. We want to prove the value.
It's not ice.
Well, exactly. Now, these were some of the biggest CCaaS vendors as well, whereas we're smaller, so I'm closer to what actually goes on. And I said, you might think you do that, but trust me, I'm in the deals, you don't. And I think we've all got a bit of a responsibility here to say, look, again, like Jimmy said, it's like someone, I'm using Copilot quite a lot these days. You've got, but I don't. And we're about to do some agent stuff internally. We're about to automate some tasks, etc. But you've got to start a bit smaller. It's too much. We've all got responsibility to prove what works. And I can take you to a call center that's been with us for 20 years, and they're far on the journey and show you what good could look like. But I still wouldn't sell that to you on day one because it's too much. Our biggest number one reason for failures in CCaaS rollouts when they've not got a CCaaS platform is pushback from the staff. They don't like it. They don't like the real-time stats that they're not used to. They don't like the fact you've now got speech analytics that's watching everything they say. It's people that push back this stuff. So you've got to get all the buy-in. You've got to do all that other stuff as well. It's not just as easy as saying the technology works. Like I said, we're going to automate everything. Everyone's worried about the jobs now.
You know what? I had the same conversation with a technology vendor about outbound and saying, right, actually, you're not engaging people soon enough to transition them into using a dialer, because the behaviors that you get when you're using a dialer become very, very different to I'm just going off a spreadsheet. So I think you're absolutely right from a mindset perspective and people adoption. You've got to put people very high up on the agenda first. Jimmy, just any final thoughts from yourself before we round off for the hour, because we're coming up to our full 60-minute quota. So any final thoughts and reflections on CCaaS, the future of CCaaS, the coexistence of conversational AI, or the takeover of AI? Final thoughts.
No, I actually think I've over the course of this hour I've probably come
You've come full circle. You're back to CCaaS.
And look at that, Jimmy. Actually, as everybody knows, like I'm never wrong and I never change my mind, so it's a bit surprising. I actually think hell's like freezing over because they've just been like,
no, it is. We're both in Manchester, if you don't know. It's absolutely started bombing down.
So I think where I am is, I think first of all, the adoption piece I think is really interesting in how you win hearts and minds to go on the journey of more automation, more agentic AI. I think there's a lot of things to come, and there's a lot of gatekeepers in the space. I think to that end, I do actually think that maybe CCaaS is I think I'd use the term gateway drug, but it is the gateway to creating the scale, which then creates the opportunities for the AI and the automation. And then finally, I think there is the kind of the ethical aspect of things, and we have to be careful that we're not either internal ethics around overselling the capabilities and stuff, but then also like the long run impact of automation. And therefore, I believe that stripping back on some of the SaaS costs keeps the humans on the pitch for a little bit longer. And I think that's a good thing.
I hope I know we're out of time very quickly. I hope it's similar to when virtualization and hosted became a thing. everyone said it was the death of IT teams, and they were worried. I was in IT. They were worried. It created more jobs in the end. Everything got more complicated. Hopefully, I'd like to think we're going to do a similar thing. It's an evolution again.
It's a coexistence. And sadly, we are out of time for everything else. But there's just a couple of things for me to say. Thank you to both Jimmy and to Ben for giving up their time in the preparation and the delivery of these. Can't do it without you. Thank you very much to everybody who has significantly contributed in the chat. There's been some really great contributions in there, and that really helps get the conversation flowing. So thank you very much for that. Please join me next month on March the 27th at the same time, where we've got Katie Forsyth and Nick Elson, and we're going to be talking about resilience, mental health and wellbeing strategies, and employee engagement in the contact center, which is always an interesting topic to get stuck into. But final thoughts from me is huge thank you to everybody who's watched. Huge thank you to Jimmy and Ben. If you could stop on for 2 seconds whilst we finish, and I'll bid everybody else adieu. Thank you very much for watching.
Thanks, everyone.